Right, so this is going to be probably the least technical talk at the conference. This is what I personally learned while building Ghost. You can find me on Twitter using @Javorszky, and pretty much everywhere else. Okay, so previously, I'm between two jobs. Previously, I was a senior WordPress developer at a web studio. And my next job is going to be a WooCommerce WordPress developer, and I know it's ironic. And I'm also one of the longest serving core developers on the Ghost project. So for the housekeeping, Ghost, the foundation, employs 6 people. I am not one of them. I'm a volunteer developer, so everything that I say is mine and not, Ghost Foundation's. So this is how it all began. John had the idea. For those who don't know, John used to be the second in command of the WordPress UI team, and he had this idea that WordPress is way too bloated and it has functionality that he doesn't need, and he just wants to write a blog. So he put out a blog post that got incredibly popular, and he decided to build this thing called Ghost. And at the time, I thought that it's going to be a fork of WordPress. It's going to be written in PHP. I was dabbling in Node.js, so pretty much it was a case of, hi, if you're up for it, I'm going to make this Ghost thing in Node.js. And then he's like, oh, are you a Node developer? And I'm like, no, not yet, but slowly sinking my teeth in. And he's like, all right, watch this space. By the way, is the display... It's not good. What's the resolution dimension? Sorry. Anyway, we'll go with it. Sorry about that. Yeah, so this is how everything began. And then in May, there was a Kickstarter, and I flagged the project, and then there was an IRC channel, and I hung around there, and everyone was super nice, and there was a Node-bot, not a Node-bot, a Hue-bot from GitHub that needed repairing. I helped that. And then as soon as the Kickstarter was funded, about 8 times what the goal was set, Hannah, who was the CDO and the co-founder, who is the CDO and the co-founder of Ghost, said, hey, we need people. Can you guys help? And I said, yep, I can help. How can I help? So she let me in, and it was the biggest surprise of my life because I had absolutely no idea about Node.js. I mean, I knew it was JavaScript with a bit of server-side stuff, but that was about it. However, the reason she let me in is because there was Hue-bot that needed repairing, so I went in, repaired it, sent a pull request, done. I got shit done. So prototype does actually worth 1,000 meetings. The next thing I had to learn is promises, because I come from a PHP land where everything is like top to bottom and nothing proceeds until the previous one finishes. Promises were a bit strange, so it took Hannah about 2 weeks to teach me that. You guys all know what promises are, so I'm not going to go into that. The third one that I learned was how to work with Git. Yeah, I used to be like that guy. I am no longer that guy. Hannah has broken me. I can no longer write bad commit messages, and I can no longer submit bad pull requests. So this, like every pull request has a closes or fixes, and then a bunch of issue numbers, and then a short description in list style, what it does, so that when you look at the pull request, you know exactly why that was there and what has happened. And we need to include tests as well all the time. Our Git workflow is the Git workflow, so there's a central repository that has about 6 people with commit access. So every contributor forks their own fork, clones it, works on a branch, submits it to our own fork, and then submits a pull request back to the central repository, and then that goes through Travis, and it checks everything. We're also squashing the commits, so one pull request is one commit, and yeah, we don't do upstream master, and I still have no idea what cherry-pick is. The fourth thing I learned is testing. We literally test for everything. And then we also test for SQL injections if we can. There was one big commit that I did. It was a couple of hundred lines long, and I only had one test. But that one test, I actually included in my pull request that, hey, this is a work in progress because I'm going to add a bunch of tests later. But what actually happened is that once I added that one test, which was already there, I had to change the previous code. So then Hannah merged it, and I was like, why did you do that? And she said, because writing the test made me realize that my code was wrong. So I changed it, so that one test was worth it, and that's exactly why tests are good. So that was my aha moment with regards to tests. Yeah, currently at last count, Ghost has 786 unit tests. That does not actually include the JS hint and the JSCS tests, and 312 functional, and it takes about 15 minutes each on a slow day. And we do it 3 times because we're supporting SQLite, MySQL, and Postgres as well. So Travis is having that fun time running all our tests. This is the only reason why you can sleep. The 5th thing I learned is that this is a Node.js application. How hard could it be to deploy? Because you have Windows and you have Linux and you have Macs, and that's not that hard. Whereas people are deploying Ghost on weird stuff. I mean, Synology NAS, it's a network attached drive. Like, how do you even have the idea to get there? But it's, someone's tried it, and someone's running it. And then there are all the wonderful various versions of Linux, and then Node.js versions. Also, by the way, if you didn't know, the even numbers are the stable releases of Node.js, and the odd numbers are the beta releases. So 0.11 is a beta release, and we do not support deploying Ghost on beta releases. The 6th thing is kind of similar to the lean startup methodology. Ship it first and then make it pretty second. This was a comment from Paul Davis, who's the front-end architect at the Ghost Foundation. There was a discussion about the nanoscroller that we're using as the scroll bars, and pretty much his stance was, first get it working and then make it pretty. Then the next one is that if you're working on a fairly large open source project, then your project will have impact on other projects. The specific example here is we're using a package called NodeMailer, and NodeMailer added the direct email sending to the package itself. Mainly, partly because Ghost was trying to use something. We're trying to detect whether SendMail was present, and it was not reliable to say the least. So we had to find a different sort of fallback to rely on. And then there were also upstream fixes for SQLite and a bunch of other modules, and it's just awesome. Ember.js, Ghost currently has more stars on GitHub than Ember.js, so I don't know whether we're feeling good that we're using Ember.js, or Ember.js is feeling proud that Ghost is using Ember.js. But everyone's wonderful, and so that. This is possibly the most important thing that I've learned. It is about people. You make friends. People who are regular contributor are awesome, and it's just a constant source of entertainment. I've made, I don't know, I can't even count how many people I've made, how many people I've met and have become friends with. But yeah, everyone has to start somewhere. I don't actually agree with this tweet, like how good you have to be to start contributing. You don't have to be good at all. Literally earlier today, this was 9 o'clock in the morning, someone came up to the Ghost IRC and said, hi, Ghost is awesome, I want to contribute, but I'm new to Node.js, how do I do that? And then it was, that is the best feeling ever. So, I just hurled a couple of links at him and like, start that. And then with new people, obviously you need to have patience, because you, as maintainers or regular contributors to open source projects, might have read the contribution 100 times. And there's this new guy who comes in and then does something not according to the contributing MD. And then you're like, oh my god. So you could reply like that, but that's the wrong way. Don't do that. Because it's up to you whether the new people are going to contribute to your project or anyone else's project on the internet. Because if you're putting them down, they're not going to return. They're going to think, oh, this open source contribution thing is, it's hurting me, so I'm not going to do that. Instead, do something like this. This is probably the 400th time that Hannah's written this reply. And it has a bunch of important bits. One of them is the hi at the very beginning, because you're acknowledging that person who has taken the time to write the pull request. And then you welcome them to the repository so that you're including them in a group that seems from the outside to be closed group. It's not. And then you tell them obviously what they need to do. And then since this comment, we've included a thank you, again, to acknowledge that they've taken this time out of their lives to do that. So it makes them feel good, so that they return, because that's what the open source community is all about, so that everyone sort of works together. And also, it's not up to me to tell them that's wrong and that's right. For that, we have the automated tasks like JS and Travis and all the other things. And if you read any of the articles that go into the details of how to learn a new language, sooner or later you're going to read something along the lines of find an open source thing that you're passionate about and start contributing to that. But again, as the maintainers of open source packages, you are the people who will teach the new people the language or the library or the whatever. So you do have an important role, and never, ever, ever tolerate marginalization. With all Gamergate and SharedGate and all the other bits and pieces on the internet, I asked Raquel Velez, who works at NPM, like, how can we help? So she said, believe when they have a bad time, amplify their voices that need to be heard, and then do not pretend, like ask them what they need and give it to them if you can. And if you all start doing that, then it's going to be awesome. This is the height of what I've learned. With that, there's issue number 2144, which sort of seared into everyone's mind. It is the discussion about which front-end framework should we use, AngularJS, or Backbone, or Angular, or React, or whichever other one. It is really, really long, and it never went down into a flame war, which is awesome. And it had contributions from the inventors of the respective packages, except for Angular, they didn't show up. In order to do that, you have to have a definition of what you want to achieve and how you want to achieve it, and you have to have moderation. So sort of whenever it goes into being personal, just like, hey, that's personal, that's not productive, let's get back on track. We ended up choosing AngularJS because for the things that we needed, AngularJS was the best fit. Rubber ducking is awesome. How many of you know what rubber duck programming is? Or rubber duck debugging? Okay, quite a few. So this happens quite often at the IRC channel. Well, not the big inflatable yellow thing being shipped down on, I think it's Hong Kong or Beijing. Then you have code in production. It's scary. The code that I've written, and I'm not even a good Node.js developer, is on the blogs. Ghost has been downloaded about 400,000 times. There are, at last count, 2,300 subscribers on the hosted version. People are installing it on various different devices. If something doesn't work, I take it kind of personally, because it's my code that didn't work. Obviously, the parts that I've written. So it's mostly like email, some of the API, passwords and authentication, kind of important parts. But remember, it's okay, because everyone has been a beginner. You have tests to back you up. You're also just human. You will make mistakes, and it's okay. And if in doubt, ask. Like, okay, this is something that I don't know about. Help me, and people will help you. And then office not required. Has anyone read Remote by DHH? It's 4 people. Read Remote. Because all the work is on the internet. We have GitHub, we have IRC, we have, well, they have Slack, I don't. But the only thing we need to do our job is to be online. The 6 people of Ghost Foundation, 3 of them live in the UK. There's 1 in Egypt, 1 in Austria, and 1 in Michigan in the United States. Why would you need 1 central office? You don't. And by contributing to open source, you level up your skill. It is, the reason why I'm here in the first place. The second thing is, I got an invite to Booking.com, which is like a huge company, simply because I was working with a guy who ended up being hired, and he referred me to them. And I went through their enrollment process, and it made sense. So I at that point knew JavaScript. There's Matt, who's just a regular dude who likes climbing and didn't hold a job for a year, and then started contributing to Ghost, and suddenly, boom, he has a job. So it just levels you up. So yes, to wrap up, contribute either to Ghost or to whatever, mentor people, and just foster the community and give back to the community, because most of the things you guys use, whenever you type npm install, it's open source. So if you're using something that's open source and you're making your software not accessible to other people, you're kind of being a bit selfish. So do try to give back. And that's pretty much it. Thank you.